Okay, enough about Iago and back to Othello. We'll keep going back and forth as most critics or respondents to this play do. And I want to come back in particular to my suggestion that this is a play that we can categorize as about a crime of reason, not a crime of passion. Othello, we've already seen, takes great pride in his maturity and his ability to control his emotions. That's part of his job as a soldier, in particular, a commander in the soldier. That you exercise controlled violence when you fight or you engage in violence. It's not an out of control violence. It is a carefully and professionally managed one, and he takes great pride in that. Professionally, he also takes great pride in his maturity, as we saw in his speech to the Duke, saying, "I'd like to take my new bride with me to war. I won't be distracted by the fact that I'm at battle and also on my honeymoon. Those sorts of distractions are for younger men. I am in control of my passions." And so he talks about this. He talks about this quite often and quite frequently, beginning in the play. Let me give you one instance. When Othello, and by the way, that control of passions is tied to his religious conversion. Iago, of course, gets Cassio drunk to put Cassio in a bad spot. This is after they've landed on Cyprus. They're the occupying army, and the worst thing you can do is inflame the local population any more than they're already inflamed. And Cassio gets drunk and starts a brawl, and Othello is furious at this as the commanding officer, and he comes out and he says, "What's the matter with you?" Act 2, Scene 3, lines 163. "Why, how now, ho, from whence arises this? Are we turned Turks? Are we turned Turks?" In short, why are you acting like those Ottoman Islamic Turks who aren't in control of their emotions? "And to ourselves that do which heaven forbid the Ottomites." You know, you guys are acting like those crazy other people. And by the way, this is a standard pejorative early modern stereotype of Muslims, that they were oversexed, out of control. In particularly, the Prophet Muhammad was denigrated in the Christian imagination because he had a wife. He was married, as opposed to the celibate Christ. In the Christian imagination, those two figures were somehow juxtaposed. So this is negative stereotype became popular, and Othello is engaging it here, saying, "You are acting like those crazy, out of control Ottoman Turks, right? You're not acting like Christians. For Christian shame, put by this barbarous brawl. He that stirs next to carve for his own rage holds his soul light. He dies upon his motion." In short, I'm going to come in. I'm going to be the one that act appropriately. I'm going to control the situation. But in this play, I want to suggest to you, it's actually when Othello loses control of his emotions a little bit that he gets closer to the truth. Here, he starts demanding of his men who started this fight, right? And Cassio and Iago, for different reasons, are hesitant to say who, and they start giving kind of double talk. Like, "Well, I don't know. I don't want to be the tattletale." And pick back up. This is Act 2, Scene 3 again, lines 199. Othello in frustration. "Now, by heaven, my blood begins my safer guides to rule, and passion, having my best judgment collide, essays to lead the way." In short, I'm losing my temper, and passions rather than reason or self-control are guiding me. "Zounds, if I stir or do but lift this arm, the best of you shall sink in my rebuke. And if I get mad," as I often say to my kids, "you don't want me to go to DEFCON 4, because if I get mad, you won't like it," right? That's what he's threatening his men with. But skip down to the last line of that speech, lines 209. "In night, who was this? And on the court and guard of safety that caused such stir? 'Tis monstrous, Iago, who began it?" And this is Shakespeare's wonderful ambiguity here. If you read the sentence grammatically, Othello could be saying, "'Tis monstrous, Iago, who began it," or it can be in the form of a question. "This is monstrous, Iago?" addressing Iago, "who began it?" Shakespeare allows for both readings. But my point here is that when Othello in this play gives into his passions, that he gets closer to the truth. Let's take another example. We'll move on to the sort of seduction scene, and this is what I call the seduction scene when Iago tricks Othello, and we've got to go over that in some detail. But Act 3, Scene 3, he finally starts to lose his temper. He says, "If you are slandering my wife and torturing me," this is lines 384, "never pray more, abandon all remorse. On horror's head, horrors accumulate, do deeds make heaven weep." And actually, in the Lawrence Fishburne film version of this, Othello is strangling or holding Iago, played by Kenneth Branagh, underwater. He's completely lost his temper. And Iago gets up and says, "Hey, I'm not going to be the guy that tells the truth anymore. You can't handle the truth. You've lost your temper." At which Othello immediately backs up and says, "No, no, no. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm under control." But again, when he gets angry, he gets closer to the truth. That is, that it's Iago that needs to be strangled. But Iago is quite deft and quite subtle in his ability to play Othello, right? He knows Othello feels certainly self-conscious that he is not that far from an Ottoman turban Turk who, like the stereotype, might lose his passions or control. So Othello exercises extreme control of himself. And we all know this kind of feeling, right? When you're upset or mad about something and still trying to communicate about it, there's nothing. If someone says, "You look upset, you look mad," our first response is to say, "No, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not losing control of my emotions." So this is one of the reasons I want you to start thinking of this as a crime of a play about a crime of reason, not passion. In fact, if we go to the penultimate scene, 5-1, this is where, sorry, not 5-1, 5-2, where Othello is about to kill Desdemona. He tries to turn this act not into a passionate murder, a crime of passion, an act of domestic violence, but a reasoned, controlled execution. Act 5, Scene 2. "It is the cause," he says. "It is the cause. I'm not blaming the person, I'm blaming the crime. My soul, let me not name it to you, chaste stars, it is the cause. Yet I'll not shed her blood nor scar that whiter skin of hers." And we'll come back to his sort of description of Desdemona. But what he's trying to do here is to talk himself into the fact that he is a disinterested, dispassionate executioner rather than a husband who's lost control of himself. And again, when he does give in to his passions or emotions, in this case positive ones, not anger, he actually gets closer to the truth. No, what happens here is he leans in and he says, just to give her one last kiss, "Oh, balmy breath, that does almost persuade justice to break her sword. One more, one more." He kisses her again. In short, that close to her and kissing her, he starts to feel, right? He starts to give in back into these emotions with which the play began, these positive emotions. And in that instance, he gets closer to the truth. And had he followed his emotions rather than his reason in this moment, the play would have ended much better for all involved.